Let's roll.
Hello and welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Here you get relevant and timely content you won't find anywhere else. You can learn more by going to mustreadalaska.com, and this show can be found on YouTube, Facebook, X, and your favorite podcast site. Let's talk truth about politics, the economy, and all things Alaska. Now, the host of the show, former state legislator, combat veteran, small business owner, and all-around great guy, Ben Carpenter.
Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, friends. I'm Ben Carpenter, your host and guide on this journey of discovery of truth and independent minded thinking. Must Read Alaska exists because discovering the truth is hard. It calls upon us to be relentless in defense of common sense, our faith in God, and the exceptional values enshrined in our Constitution. Freedom is not free. It is not for the timid. It was not secured by the weak of heart or mind. Maintaining freedom requires every one of us to be alert to daily encroachments on our liberties and on the grand deceptions of those seeking power and control over others. Every generation must pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, and we must never take our freedom for granted. We are not anti-government. We are pro-government, of the people, by the people, and for the people. Today, I had the distinct pleasure and honor of attending the Alaska Sustainable Energy Conference hosted by Governor Dunleavy. There were several hundred people in attendance from all over the world. And I thought I would do a real quick update with you, since you were not able to attend, and kind of fill you on some of the highlights here. So Governor Dunleavy opened up the morning with a talk and also introduced Matt Larkin of Dittman Survey, Dittman Polling. You've probably heard of him. Pretty reliable and honest polling outfit. So interestingly enough, I mean, I don't have all the statistics that he brought forward with me right at the moment, but I do have some of the ones that I wanted to highlight. So this is a survey not of just Alaska, but of the United States. And the purpose was to kind of get a feel of what Americans feel about Alaska. So interestingly enough, for Alaskans, Americans ranked Alaska as the most positively ranked state. And I'm not exactly sure what question they were asking, but that is what Matt led off with. Most positively ranked state. So I guess there are, in Americans' minds, there's states that have, you feel good about, and there are states you don't feel so good about, and Alaska's right up there at the top. 4 out of 5 Americans said they want to visit. Makes sense if you rank Alaska up there, in the positive in your mind. Americans believe that we are the number 2 state. We're just behind Texas for essential minerals and energy production. So people think energy and mining and oil and gas production is happening in Alaska. That's good. For the most part, they're accurate about that. Large majority believe that expanding Alaska's role in national security, mining, timber, and oil and gas is a good thing. 70% agree that Alaska should have more control over their own land. That's a bipartisan issue. So I was kind of surprised at that, because I figured most Americans wouldn't have any idea what's going on in Alaska with our land. But 70% agree that Alaska should have more control over our own land. 64% agree that the U.S. should prioritize critical mineral development in Alaska. So while it might not be something that you're following closely, others within the United States are aware that the United States is kind of in a pickle. Largely, the world's in a pickle when we've got some of our critical minerals tied up with countries that aren't necessarily in favor of the United States, like China. They certainly want us to keep spending money and buying their products, but when it comes to competing in the marketplace for critical minerals, they are very aggressive at preventing that from happening. So the gist here, and I think why Governor Dunleavy brings forward this survey results is that there is social license, and this is a word that Governor Dunleavy used. There is social license to develop Alaska, and over the last 4 years and maybe even a couple decades, the federal government has really made it difficult for us to develop in Alaska, for Alaskans to develop Alaska, and for Alaskans to ask companies to come in and help develop Alaska. This is something that has been stymied by regulation and by lawsuits, and just preventing it from happening. And a theme that you heard multiple times from Governor Dunleavy was, this is something, developing Alaska is what we're expected to do at statehood. The federal government and Congress expected Alaskans to develop Alaska in order for us to stand on our own 2 feet. And yet, decades later, the federal government is the largest factor for why we can't develop Alaska. So Governor Dunleavy spoke about Alaska having a competitive edge. We have support from Asian allies who really want to see markets open. We can develop our natural resources in an environmentally friendly way. And we have the Trump administration support. He went so far to say that you can't, this notion that you can't develop Alaska without damaging the environment is simply untrue. Alaska proves that we can do that. Demand for the oil, gas, critical minerals is not going away. Like, all of the projections worldwide is that, no matter where you fall on this energy transition and the Green New Deal and all of that, the demand for oil and gas and critical minerals isn't going away. Furthermore, if you're going to go to a transition where you're needing more electricity, you're needing more data centers, artificial intelligence is the way, you need more computing power. All of that takes more computers and more raw materials. So this transition cannot be seen as a move away from oil and gas and raw materials, the critical earth minerals, because those are needed for the transition, right? So the big names that came to the conference and spoke today were our National U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright, our Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, and the EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. And I have to say that it was refreshing to hear these guys talk and share with the crowd on what President Trump has asked them to do. And I'm gonna queue up some audio here from those individuals speaking, so that you can hear from the horse's mouth what was said, and the leaders that are leading our nation and helping Alaska develop our state going forward. So here is this is Interior Secretary Doug Burgum on the future of Alaska.
Well, yes, I was here July 4th, 1976 in Kotzebue. So by myself, interesting the way I got here, I hitchhiked to Alaska. I didn't hitchhike all the way to Kotzebue because, of course, there's no road. You taught school there, but I did make it from Arthur, North Dakota to Alaska hitchhiking. I did take a little part of that on the Alaska ferry system before I walked over the Chilkoot Trail at Skagway. There wasn't a road there in Skagway at the time I did that. But it's an amazing place, and it's my first time here in the current role. And it's everything that these two gentlemen said. I just think that Alaska is in a spot where they can do it all. Alaska can have can have the most beautiful national parks. It can have the most amazing wildlife. It can have incredible hunting and fishing opportunities. It can have incredible tourism opportunities. But there are some things that have been choked by regulation. Timber development has been choked by regulation. We've got a mining opportunity in Alaska like no other. And now we find ourselves in this pitched battle around critical and rare earth minerals, where the free world essentially has allowed themselves to become dependent on China as a single source supplier for key critical minerals that affect every industry that we have, from automotive to defense to medical equipment, everything. And that has to change. We have to get back in the mining game. We have to get back in the timber game, and certainly from an oil and gas standpoint, the opportunity future here. You heard Bill Armstrong talking about it, but it's essentially in some ways untapped. This is the beginning of Alaska as an energy state, not the end of Alaska as an energy state. And I couldn't be more excited about it. And in the job that I'm in right now, of course, with parks, with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, with Bureau of Land Management, the huge chunk of my job is Alaska. So it's without a doubt, this may be my first trip here as Secretary of Interior. It won't be my last, because literally it's my job to come here. It's my job to understand the issues that are here. And one of the things that was so interesting when we were meeting with the leaders from the North Slope, they, again, that care deeply about the land, the water, the wildlife, the soil health, all of the things they care about. They care about it more than any bureaucrat ever could. And so they care about it, but then also when we talked about the issues, they would say, this is an issue my grandfather was working on. I mean, we've got some things, whether it's, you mentioned this morning in your remarks, whether it's, for 45 years trying to get land transfers done to your state, getting roads built, getting basic infrastructure. These are things that the Trump administration, the three of us, are chartered to do.
So super refreshing to hear our leaders in Washington, D.C. Speaking so positively about Alaska. The Interior Secretary spoke briefly about what their charter is from Trump, and I'll let you listen.
The three of us are here representing the Trump administration because we want Alaska to know we see you, we hear you, we care about you, and we're going to make sure that these things where the federal government has gotten in your way over these last decades, our job, literally, our instructions from the President of the United States is to get the government out of the way so that Alaska can reach its full potential.
To every Alaskan that's following and interested in increasing prosperity in our state, this has got to be music to your ears, and it's a long time coming because we never heard this from the Biden administration. In the final clip of Interior Secretary Burgum that I'm going to share with you today, steps back out to a 30,000-foot level and shows that he knows exactly what's at stake. And here you go.
So part of what we're doing is just unwinding a bunch of bad stuff that was literally illegal against the state of Alaska to allow for self-determination. As a governor, I understood that the federal government has limited rights. The 13 original states said, these are the rights of the federal government. And anything else that's not delineated as a specific right, like protecting the border, like printing currency, like national defense, anything that's not in this narrow category is deferred back to the states. Along comes Alaska, achieves statehood, and then has basically been fighting for statehood every day since, because the federal government keeps saying, no, for you, Alaska, you're special. We're going to retain that power and that thing. And I understood that as a governor, that we've got to keep fighting. So part of what we're doing here to really have Alaska reach its whole potential is we've got to just stop the federal overreach, stop the federal overlap, because you've got great game and fish working for you. And guess what? In the North Slope Bureau, they've got some of the biggest experts in the world on polar bears working for them. I mean, so we had somebody in Washington, D.C. going to make a decision about polar bears as opposed to talking to the people that have lived among them and understand them their whole life. So part of this is just basic principles that we have to get back to. And you said we're all excited to do it. And
so that's Interior Secretary Burgum. If you haven't heard him speak before, super individual, and did very good connecting with the audience. here, in my opinion. At least he connected with this individual. I sure appreciated hearing what he had to say. So next, I'm going to play a clip from Lee Zeldin, who's not a secretary by definition. Technically, he's an EPA administrator. But I'm going to play an audio clip of Lee Zeldin. So here's Governor Dunleavy posing a question to Lee Zeldin.
Lee, just to build upon what Doug said, when you were tapped by the president and he said he wanted you for EPA, what were some of the things he said to you that were important to him, that he thought would be important to the country, and how do you see that in the context of Alaska?
The president called me a Sunday morning, November 11th, very excited and motivated and asking me to serve as administrator of EPA. And I don't know exactly what the conversation went like 8 years earlier when asking a predecessor to do this position, but I do know that on that day, that morning, when he was asking me to do this position, he knew a lot of what he wanted us to accomplish. It was a long list. If the conversation lasted longer, we would have gotten further down his list, and it was specific. I would say that the topic that he brought up the most, I would put under the category of permitting reform. He was talking about wanting to unleash energy dominance, wanting to make America the AI capital of the world. And that conversation inspired what is under the Trump EPA and an initiative we call Powering the Great American Comeback. And the first pillar is about the core mission. President Trump talks about clean air, land, and water for all Americans. And that's the first pillar of Powering the Great American Comeback. The rest of the pillars are what I just referenced. Number 2, unleash energy dominance. 3, advancing cooperative federalism and permitting reform. Number 4, making America the AI capital of the world. And number 5, which is a big deal, especially for certain states like Michigan, but bringing back American auto jobs. There's a lot of regulations with EV mandates that came down and a push out of Washington with tailpipe emissions that have impacts for all 50 states. The president knew in great detail what he wanted us to fix. We inherited a very big mess from our predecessor, from President Biden, from the Biden EPA. On March 12th, we announced what will amount to the largest deregulatory action in the history of the country. One agency in 1 year will do more deregulation than entire federal governments across all agencies have done across entire presidencies. And
I've got to. That is music to our ears, but I got to call.
And the American people voted for it. The American people demand it. This is the Trump mandate. This isn't something that is sprung upon America after the election of President Trump. It's not like these are topics that he didn't say, if you elect me, he was going to focus on. As a matter of fact, it was right there at the top of the list as he was campaigning, wanting to make America great again, making America prosperous, and tapping into this potential of the great state of Alaska. And to make sure that this, as I referenced earlier, the golden age of America would be upon us. And I just have to say that this visit confirms that President Trump's campaign promises were spot on, that the judgment of the American voter was spot on. This is the right leader at the right time to be able to fix so much of what is wrong. And I have to tell you, I admire these two gentlemen to my left and right so much. I have been inside of meetings with President Trump where we're sitting there at the Resolute desk and President Trump is talking about Alaska. And he's talking about different ways to unleash the potential of this state. And these two gentlemen next to me with extraordinary detail, depth, intellect are thinking 10 steps ahead on what we need to do. This partnership from the three of us, this isn't a box to check for the three of us to be here. This isn't about stopping in Alaska, appearing here for an hour and 15 minutes, disappearing. We want to make sure that every single day that we are on the job, that we are delivering. And it is nothing like actually being here in person, to be able to see what we saw these last couple days, to be able to listen to the people, whether it's the workers to the residents. There's no replicating it. And there's no way, by the way, to replicate this view. I'm from Long Island, New York, where our tallest spot on Long Island is a landfill. And I have this great seat being here that you can't find in Washington, D.C. We have nice views. We have historic views. But I got to tell you, there's nothing like being here on the ground firsthand to be able to be with all of you. But we want to ensure that we are following through and making the most of these 4 years where we are not pacing ourselves. This is a sprint for the three of us, for our teams, for the Trump administration. Secretary Burgum was absolutely right. We are working for the hardest working person in America. And I'll just say very briefly, Chad Wolf, who was the acting Secretary of Homeland Security in the first administration, had told me about this story where one night he turns off his phone at midnight because he really needed 6 hours of sleep. And at 1:30 in the morning, a Secret Service agent enters the house. Now Chad Wolf's wife didn't know who was in the house, but hits Chad and says, "Someone's in the house." And it's impossible because they had 24/7 protection, but I'll go check. It was the president trying to reach Chad. And at 1:30 in the morning, had a conversation with Chad on all sorts of things that were important to the president. But that's not the craziest part of this story, because we all know how a hard worker he is, that he'll make these calls at 1:30. Doug knows this story, Chad gets a phone call back from the president at 6 a.m., so 4.5 hours later, references one of the topics from the 1:30 conversation and asked Chad for an update. How's it going?
We're always.
That's who we proudly work for. So follow through is going to be important, and making you all proud, and we're not going to pace ourselves.
Thank you.
Well, it's certainly a friendly audience and a well-received kind of anecdotal story about the inner workings of the Trump administration. Great to hear Lee talk about that. So this next clip I'm going to play is from Energy Secretary Chris Wright on Trump's perspective on energy and what the future of energy looks like. And I think you're going to love this clip.
The president loves energy. He gushes it. His personality is energetic, but he loves the industry and the role energy plays in the world. And if you love it so strongly, what that says to me is he deeply understands energy. Because if you understand energy, you love it. There is no force more transformative in human history and in human time than energy. And we've really gotten off track on energy. And the president got elected and is on a mission to get us back on track. Energy is about people and math. There's no point in producing energy if you're not going to better people's lives. That's why we produce energy. Math is the world has finite resources, finite financial resources, time, land, people. What is the greatest bang for the buck in those resources into energy to get the maximum betterment of humans? It's about people and math. And we have gotten wildly off track. That the last administration just bonkers, but too much of the wealthy world or government figures and powerful figures in the political world have just lost sight of people and math. You know, we've got this hyper focus on climate change, and there's this policy and that, all in the name of climate change. Look at them just for a little bit. Almost none of them will have any impact whatsoever on climate change. If you stop production of oil in Alaska, you didn't change the demand for oil. You just meant it's going to be produced somewhere else. That's not a climate change policy. So they're not really focused on climate change, but it's sort of the license to turn off your logic switch when you talk about energy. You know, we hear terms like clean energy and renewable energy. These are inaccurate marketing terms. There is no energy source that does not take significant materials, land, and impact on the environment to produce. Zero. They all produce some energy. That's good for humans. It's just about the math of the trade-offs. Energy just transforms human lives. To put that in energy, life today without modern energy is nasty, brutish, and short, just like it was throughout all of human history. There's about 1 billion people that live remotely like those of us in this room. I'm looking around. We traveled to a conference. We got these clothes all made out of oil and gas, by the way. Not just made with oil and gas, made out of oil and gas. We live these great lives, and I'll tell you, there's 7 billion people. I have not met them all, but all of the ones I've met of that 7 billion people, they want a life like us. And there's no pathway from there to here without massively more energy. A couple other math points I'll make. 50 years ago, the world got 85% of its primary energy from oil, gas, and coal. I started my career, as you heard, working in nuclear, solar, geothermal. I want more energy wherever we can get it, as long as it's affordable, reliable, and secure. But today, 50 years later, the world gets 85% of its primary energy from oil, gas, and coal. The math says desire, political proclamations, trillions of dollars deployed does not equal changing your energy system. Everything is still ruled by the math. Two other examples, and then I'll stop. We've spent, it depends how you count it, somewhere $3 to $6 trillion across the world on wind, solar, and batteries, because they're the politically favored energy source. We've spent an insane amount of money in this area. And last year, I can proudly report they've crested past 3% of global energy. Not quite to 3.5%, but on the way. $4 to $6 trillion.
That's phenomenal. I mean, you think about just the notion of an energy transition where you can wean yourself from oil and gas. That is as Chris put it, you've switched off your logic switch, right? It's gone. You've stopped thinking, because we don't have the resources. We don't have the money. We don't have the ability as human beings right now to move away and transition in my lifetime from oil and gas, from your lifetime, oil and gas, probably from my kids' lifetime from oil and gas. Now, it's not to say that some ingenious thing happens in the next 6 years, and maybe that's where artificial intelligence is going to come in and help us with some new technology that revolutionizes human existence. But this is big picture thinking. This is understanding the reality of the world that we live in. It's so refreshing after the 4 years of the Biden administration and completely illogical thinking coming out of Washington, D.C. I am super encouraged by hearing the three of these individuals talking. Okay, so last clip that I'm going to share with you is these three on the LNG pipeline project. Okay, so here's Governor Dunleavy introducing the question to the individuals, the three speakers here, and we'll get this going here for you right now.
Because it is a big project for the president. It's a big project for us, is the gas line project. So 2 minutes going down for each of the guys. How do you envision that? What would you say to investors, and what would you say to the world regarding LNG and the real possibility, actually, we really believe it's going to happen on this LNG project moving forward? Chris.
Look, progress requires infrastructure. Alaska hasn't built a road in 40 years, hasn't built a meaningful pipeline in just as long. We need to build this pipeline. It will transform the lives of people in Fairbanks and Anchorage and all the communities around here, bringing economic opportunity, bringing lower cost of living and better lives. And of course, it'll be a pathway to build a little bit more infrastructure to deliver gas to the world. Natural gas is by far the fastest growing source of energy on the planet. 40% of the growth in total global energy consumption in the last 15 years, 40% has come from natural gas, and no indications that's changing. So a tremendous opportunity for Alaska, but it takes bold capitalists and bold bets to make it happen. But that's what made Alaska a state, onward and upward.
Exactly. Thank you. Lee.
My colleagues described this as the big, beautiful twin as we were up on the North Slope. And the president is in Washington working on finalizing a big, beautiful bill, working on tax cuts and so much more. And a lot of benefits to Alaska is top of the list. Obviously, your congressional delegations working hard on getting that bill over the finish line. This project presents enormous opportunity. And I felt when we were at the first stop on the slope, when we were meeting with community residents, we took a windshield tour just before this town hall that we did. And I saw living conditions that felt like I was on a foot patrol back in a village in Iraq. That was the first flashback that I had. But this isn't some third world country, and this isn't a conflict in wartime. This is America. And these are Americans. And it's one thing if you live like that and you feel and are in fact hopeless. It's another thing as you're taking this windshield tour and you're seeing the living conditions of homes, the building condition of schools, and you're sitting on a resource that has so much potential. And if I left this trip from Alaska motivated by one moment, it was on that windshield tour and seeing these living conditions and knowing that if we get this job done, and by we, it means all of us in this room, we all have to do our part. If we get it over the finish line, all across this state, including people who live up on the North Slope in really tough conditions, they will never have to look back in a way that causes them sadness and pain. They'd be able to tell stories of being tough and being through hard times and overcoming challenges. But it is this moment in 2025 and 26 and 27 and 28 that if we can get this project over the finish line, it's going to be better for America. It's going to be better for Alaska. It's going to be better for our international partners, who we are very grateful that they are here joining us today. It is going to be better for the world. So this is a very big deal that has to get done.
Doug, you're going to finish up here, and Lee said something about certain conditions reminding him of a war zone, and I'm being sincere when I say this. A lot of us believe that there was a war declared on Alaska by the previous administration and some administrations before that hobbled us and prevented us from realizing our full potential that the framers of our Constitution, the Statehood Act, federal officials want us to accomplish. But I'm glad you pointed that out. But Doug, you have a hat that says Uncle Doug. A lot of us call you Father Doug because of your scope over the state of Alaska in terms of all the stuff in your portfolio. And I remember we talked one time and I said to you, Doug, hey, I don't want to take a lot of your time. You said, Mike, listen, you guys are 50% of the portfolio. We're going to give you the time that we need. And that's why you're here today. But you're in charge of NEDC. You're really the czar of Alaska. You're on all three of you are the point people for this gas line. Tell me what your thoughts are as we finish up.
And I just want to say thank you.
And first, I'll tell you, I have a hat that
for
says
bringing
Uncle
this up
Doug because I'm very happy that the mayor of the North Slope Bureau gave me one the other day. I'm wearing it with pride as a term of endearment, so I appreciate that. But yes, as
we're a nation of states.
Fellow leaders here have said, the Alaska pipeline, first of all, we have so much gas. We have literally unbelievable amounts of gas on the North Slope. I mean, the re-injecting, when we were up there, they're re-injecting 8 billion cubic feet a day. I mean, there's not a place in the world where we know we've got that much gas. We've been re-injecting it for 47 years. So it's not a question of finding it, it's just transporting it. We know, as Chris talked about, the demand for natural gas is going up all over the world. It's preferred, and it's also very easy to ship. We also know that Alaska,
to stop
from a
resource
geographic
development in
standpoint,
Alaska.
is so
It's
connected
crazy.
to Asia.
Don't do that.
From our Asia allies, it's an 8-day trip. From other
Secretary
parts of
Virgo.
the world, whether it's the Gulf of America or whether it's the Gulf states. I mean, you're talking 24 to 28 days. Huge shipping advantages. And then it's not just the distance, it's also the shipping security. If you're shipping from the Middle East, to Japan or South Korea, and understand that our allies, they're here today, those two countries, along with the Philippines, Taiwan, and others, but there's tension in that part of the world. And there's tension there like today, like we haven't had since World War II. And again, Alaska is so large, it's hard to understand. Japan, an island with 120 million people on an island that's about 2/9 the size of, it'd be probably easier to say slightly more than less than a quarter, but it's like less than a quarter of Alaska. There's 120 million people. South Korea is even a smaller fraction than that, because South Korea is 1/4 the size of Japan, with 51 million people in this space. Or if you like North Dakota analogies, it's South Korea is half of North Dakota. Japan is like North Dakota and South Dakota, but these are small compared to Alaska. And then both of those countries have almost zero oil and gas. So they're importing 100%. They're completely dependent. And if it's coming from the Middle East, it's coming through the Taiwanese Straits. Taiwan is here. Taiwan wants to have LNG from Alaska. They shared that this morning. They've signed the MOU. I mean, and of course they would want that, because if there's going to be a place where it erupts, and now you've got China with 350 ships, largest navy in the world. If there's a blockade there, I mean, you could be in a situation with Korea and Japan, and you say, oh, well, that's those guys, not us. Take America first. Well, one of our largest bases outside the United States is in Japan. Japan has been a partner and an ally of ours since World War II for 70 years. The largest number of troops we have at any one location outside the U.S. is in South Korea. 28,000 troops are in South Korea. And of course, we've got a presence in all these other countries, and we've got a great partnership with UAE. They're here today. They're investing record amounts of money in energy infrastructure in America. So we have great partners that are here, but we're in this thing together. But Alaska also needs it, the citizens of Alaska, because the Cook Inlet gas is in decline. We need to have more energy here for the state of Alaska. And then we have multiple really important DOD locations here in Alaska. And a number of them could use a second secure source. A lot of them today are using coal, which is great. You can stockpile it. It's assured. It's 24 hours a day. But let's give them an opportunity to have LNG as well, because we can just run spur lines off this pipeline. So whether it's the people of Alaska, whether it's U.S. defense in Alaska, whether it's our allies that are an extension of our defense, this is a reason why President Trump, it's the only infrastructure project he talked about in his joint address to the two chambers of Congress this year, was this project. And of course, when he hears that it might take, X number of years to get done, the only question he has for the governor and myself and the three of us is, why can't you do it faster? Because he knows that we built this technological marvel called TAPS, called the Transatlantic Pipeline, that we built that in 2 years and 2 months across wilderness. Now we're building a pipeline next to existing infrastructure, next to a haul road, next to a railroad. Why in the world? So part of making America great again is being able to do big, bold, great things and do them well and do them quickly. And that's what we've been charged to do. So part of it, we have to actually start thinking differently as a country, thinking differently as business leaders, and say, yes, why can't we do this in 2 to 3 years? Why can't we get it done faster? What would stop us? If we were in the middle of a war and we were going to then we're going to get charged for it, couldn't we get it done? Of course we could get it done. But we are in a war. We're in an AI arms race right now, and so are our allies. And so let's figure out a way to unleash ourselves from the strangulation of regulation. We can build great things and take care of the environment. This is not a time for or. This is a time for and we've got the intelligence, the capability, and the caring to get it done. Let's go do it.
So if I'm a betting man, I'm saying the full force and power of the federal government is coming to bear on getting a natural gas pipeline built from the North Slope down to Tidewater in Nikiski. That's what I think. I think that's what's going to happen, barring some catastrophe, which heaven forbid anything like that happens. But we've got serious firepower and serious players with the ability to think big. These guys are not suffering from low expectations. That's the last 4 years Biden administration. Low expectations. What can government do for us? Think about it. all of this energy transition and Green New Deal all require government spending to keep it afloat, to make it happen. This, Chris spoke about $4 to $6 trillion worldwide spent on this energy transition. That's government spending. That's maybe there's some private money in there, but it's mostly government spending. In the United States, that's debt. That's future generations having to pay for this adventure into clean energy, which is a misnomer. It's illogical. So anyway, that's what I got for you today. That's the recap from day one of the energy conference. I'll be back tomorrow with day two, and stay tuned. It was a good conference. Lots being discussed, and for those that really believe that alternative energy plays a role, and I'm not denying that there's a place for alternative energy sources. Lots being covered by many different entities during breakout sessions and having conversations about how to move forward with alternative energy. I just want to flip that logic switch on. It's not free. If it's government money, it's not free. Somebody's paying for it. And if we're going into debt, that means future generations, that's our kids and our grandkids and their grandkids, that are going to get saddled with having to pay for that project. So if you're talking about some sort of energy transition, then talk about how we in this current generation can pay for it. That's the kindest thing. That's the responsible thing to do. We have to stop with this concept of saddling the future generations with debt and with lower prosperity because of things that we think we need now. That is immoral. It's wrong. If we have to sacrifice in order for the future generations to have more than we had now, then that's where our focus needs to be. For Alaska, we need to have a conversation about growing our economy. Starts with energy. But let's have a conversation about growing our economy and how do we structure our state government? How do we structure our financial mechanisms to want a growing economy? I'm telling you, the state legislature does not care about private sector growth. Not in the way that you think that it should. It doesn't matter to our budget process. So what if our GDP goes up? If it's a GDP that goes up because of oil development, then yes, we're going to see money come into the state coffers. But largely, unless it's major corporations paying an increase in corporate income tax, any sort of economic growth has minimal impact to our state budget. So why would people in the legislature care about what they're doing, whether it hurts or helps the private sector economy? It doesn't matter. We need to have a conversation about structuring our financial mechanisms so the legislature, the people that we send down there, are incentivized to do no harm and do things that support economic growth, jobs, and prosperity for Alaskans, not just how do we spend more money on government and let's take care of government workers. That is what's happening down in Juneau. They're incentivized to. That's what matters. That's what matters to Juneau. We need to have some serious conversations about how to get our state leaders to care about private sector growth. Anyway, I'll have more for you from the Energy Conference tomorrow. This has Ben Carpenter signing off for Must Read Alaska.